This podcast would not be possible without B Flashy and Fogtown. They're two streamers on Twitch that are amazing. They play Madden. They're amazing at Madden. I'll say they're the two best streamers on Twitch. That's just my opinion. Go check them out. They play their followers. You jump in. They just play regulars. So if you want a good challenge on Madden, figure out where your skill level is. Go in there and check them out. And even if you don't play Madden, go in there and check them out. I love going on Twitch and just hanging out with those guys and talking about sports. I mean, with all the quarantine stuff going on, it's nice to go in and talk about something other. Just get your mind off it for a bit and go talk about sports. So if you get a chance, check them out. They're awesome people. And so let's get into it. I want to start. This is going to be the Seahawks episode. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to struggle a little through this one, probably more than other ones, because I'm a diehard 49er fan. And that's why I wanted to start with this one, just to. The Seahawks are the top rival for me against the 49ers. Talking positive about the Seahawks is not something I'm good at, but I want to do a podcast on every team of why I think they will make the playoffs, and I'm not going to leave Seattle out of this. So I'm going to do this podcast on it. And my first thought was that Seattle, doing a podcast on why Seattle is going to make the playoffs. Honestly, that doesn't make sense. This is a Super Bowl team. This should be a podcast on why I believe that the Seahawks might win the Super Bowl. If they could beat the Niners, I'll try to leave the Niner talk out of it for today. But let's get into it. Everyone knows about their offense. I'll get into Russell Wilson and that offensive line and just all that offensive stuff later, right? I want to start with defense. Defense wins championships. Seattle's known for their defense. They dropped off last year. They're ranked, I think, 25th. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know it was around there. But I like what they did in the offseason. I hate to admit it, but I like what they did on the offseason. They addressed the defensive side of the ball with their first two picks. I thought it was funny that they drafted linebackers or a linebacker because that's probably one of the most depth pieces. Like, they have a lot of linebackers, but learning more about Jordan Brooks and just he has high IQ. His athleticism is awesome. He's great in the run. He's great in the pass. This guy can be a future starter. If you have KJ Wright is getting a little older. I thought he was always an underrated linebacker especially I thought he was the most underrated piece on that defense for the past however long KJ Wright's been there. I don't think he gets talked about enough. I think KJ, as good as Bobby Wagner is, I mean, this guy, not trying to compare it all, but he's like the Scottie Pippen of that defense. Like, he definitely is this Bobby Wagner's Scottie Pippen. He helps out Bobby Wagner a lot. And KJ Wright makes a lot of big plays. I mean, it just seems like he makes key tackles in those key moments. And he might not be getting this, the flashy plays, but he does make those big plays in key moments. And then I thought their second round pick, Taylor, I think his name, the guy from Tennessee, he improved in college. He started out with 0 sacks. Then I think he went to 3, and then he had like 8 his last 2 years. So that shows improvement to perform in the NFL. I don't know how much he can help this year because of the quarantine, all that stuff, like the offseason. I'm really curious to see how the offseason affects a lot of these teams. I don't know how certain teams are going to handle it, but like teams like Seattle, 49, just teams that have strong, just great strong locker room leaders, I think they will handle it a lot better. So I think they can help the rookies improve. I mean, it's not like the rookies couldn't work out or learn the playbook, but it does. I think it is going to slow down a lot of these rookies from producing, especially in the beginning. But I think Taylor, he can get, when he gets some playing time, I could see him having the skill. He could 2 sacks. Let's say 2 sacks. That for a rookie second round pick, that would be, that I think that's logistic. 3 sacks, that's replacing Clowney's numbers on sack production. Clowney only had 3 sacks last year. I mean, I'm not saying that Clowney isn't a top defensive lineman, but in that system, you don't need great players. You just need great players who fit the system. You need great system players. It's how that defense works. It's how the NFL works. If you have a player that fits your system a lot better, why go pay someone else less money, and don't pay Clowney as much if he doesn't fit your system as well. He had a great year last year. He had definitely some big plays. Obviously, as a 49er fan, I know what that Monday night game, that sucked, but I'm partly happy that he's gone, but I don't think you need Clowney. Like, Clowney's injury prone. I think he wants too much money for what he actually does on the field. I mean, he makes big plays, but I just think he wants too much money. So I thought it was a great move by not signing Clowney. I mean, you have defensive line depth. Flowers had 2 sacks, and he's a cornerback. I've noticed the Niners and the Seahawks that I've never noticed this before, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but a lot of the times they'll take, if there's let's say there's no receivers lined up on the left side of the field, they'll take that DB, walk him down to the line, and if the quarterback doesn't see him, they go on a blitz and they'll get a sack. And the Niners do that with Williams a lot, and the Seahawks do it with Flowers. And sometimes it's an easy sack, sometimes it does cost them. It cost the Niners in the Super Bowl. It's the play that Richard Sherman got burnt on. But it's one of my favorite defensive. So my point is that 3 sacks isn't hard to replace. I mean, if you're getting 3 sacks with a corner, that you can get this, you get that replaced. Wagner, probably, he had 3 sacks last year. He'll probably have 3 sacks again. I mean, sacks aren't, I think sacks are a little bit overrated stat, but getting to pressure on the quarterback so that, your corners have time to cover is key. If your corners have all day to cover, I don't care who's back there, you're not going to complete a pass. So the Seahawks pass rush, I think, is underrated right now, and I think next year they're going to, that defensive line is going to get talked with, maybe the top 10 in the NFL. You got Green, Jefferson, Reed, Jackson, and Anza. I mean, and Ziggy Anza. Green had 4 sacks, so your Seahawks are returning their sack leader with 4 sacks. Reed, had a big year last year, an underrated year last year. I think that defensive line being in the system, another year, that's the longer you're in a system, the faster you can play in that system, the better you get. So I think the fact that it's basically the same core of defense returning, that means that defense is going to be a lot better, especially with Diggs. I mean, mid-season trade, learning a new defense. I know Seattle kind of plays a base defense, but just knowing where to be, knowing where, that's going to help out Diggs a lot. And he's definitely way better in Seattle's defense than he was in Lions. Griffin, one more year at 8. I mean, he's just going to get better. Flowers, I don't think he can get worse. I think he's a bit overrated when it comes to covering, but he definitely plays the run well. And he, like I said, he's getting some sacks, he gets some turnovers. So I see why they have him out there. You got Bobby Wagner. I think this is a defense that can go from 25th to 13th or whatever. That may sound high, but they were the top 5 run defense in the NFL last year. So, if you improve your defense or your pass defense a lot more, you can be that. This defense can be a top 15 defense. I can see it happening. The offense, I mean, I don't even feel like I need to talk about the offense. Russell Wilson, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl winning quarterback, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, they're 2 great wide receivers. I'd swear Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson have a play where they call it like every 5 plays where they're just like, go deep. I'll just lob it up to you and you try to catch it. Like, It just sometimes it seems like it's a lot more luck than skill. I maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's just my opinion. DK Metcalf is just a beast. He's just going to get better. Maybe he'll learn how to not fumble the ball this year, and that. But the big thing is, Carson and Penny coming back. That's big. But I think the bigger thing is Disley coming back. Disley was having a great year before he got hurt. I think he got hurt with an Achilles, but it did happen in the end of or in the beginning of the season. So I think he'll be back in time. For training camp. They say it takes what is it, 13 months or something like that to fully recover from an Achilles. So maybe he won't be fully recovered till the middle of the season. You still have Hollister, but I think Disley's going to have a great impact later on in the season. I know I kind of glossed over Carson and Penny, but Carson was having a Pro Bowl level year. The fumbles, I think, do worry people. I know they worry a couple of the Seahawks fans I know, but they were. I think most of the fumbles he had this year were just great defensive plays. I think we get confused as fans sometimes on, when someone makes a mistake, it's like, oh, that guy sucks, instead of saying, oh, maybe that was just a great defensive play. Maybe, I think the Seattle game, the guy, he just went in behind and ripped it out of his hands, and it was, Pete Carroll even said it. It was one of the, just a great technique for a fumble. Like, that's just, sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes the other guy is just better on that time. And so I'm not too concerned about the fumbles with Carson. He'll be back. I think he'll have a great year again this year. Clearly, Seattle should be making the playoffs. I think they're going to go wild card, obviously, but this is a Super Bowl caliber team, and I can see it. And I like going through the schedule. It's a lot of fun. I like going through each team's schedules, knowing who plays who, and I think it has a lot to do with where you finish too. I think it's one of the more underrated things of getting a schedule, and whether you get a lucky on the schedule or you're not. If you have to face 7 playoff teams within the first 10 games, then it's going to be really hard to make the playoffs, whether you're a good team or not. So I like going through the schedule because I think that has a lot to do with, I think that has much to do with it, if not, maybe not as much, but it definitely has a big part in this. And they start out in Atlanta. That's a very winnable game, in my opinion, especially just because it's the first game of the season. I think every game is winnable for every team in the first. Anyone can upset anyone. Any given Sunday, but then you add the first week of the NFL season, especially with this year with all the stuff that's been going on, I can see people starting out slow. So, these are going to be the early starts are going to be key for teams. I think a lot of teams can steal a few early games, like bad teams can steal a few early teams against good teams in the beginning. And I'm really excited for week 1, just to see who beats who and see who really comes out strong and who doesn't. I think you're going to see who was really training this offseason, who's dedicated. Because you could have easily have not. I think some of these players could have not have trained. It's easy to quarantine. I get why they would want to stay quarantined too. It's going to be awesome to see. I think this is going to be the funnest NFL season. I'm super excited about it. Like I said, they got Atlanta. I think that's a 50-50 game. I would lean towards Seattle, but it is in Atlanta, so I really kind of torn on that one. If I had to pick, I would pick Seattle, but I would not be surprised if Atlanta won that game. And then you're at home against New England, and that's that's going to be that's a bigger game. I don't think it's the biggest game as people think. I don't even think it'd be that good of a game, to be honest with you. I think Cam Newton signing with the Patriots is, I think that's a good thing. I think New England automatically has a chance to make the playoffs. Now, I didn't know if they were going to with Stidman. I was debating on it, but with Cam Newton, they definitely have 100% of a shot. But so early in the season facing New England, I think that's a luxury because Cam Newton has to still learn the playbook. He's coming off an injury. How good is he going to be in the beginning? will they even start him? Will he even be caught up to speed by then? Are they going to start Stidham? For New England, for all those question marks to go into Seattle on prime time, where Seattle in prime time is a very tough team to beat. They play better in prime time. That's just it. They just always do. I hate to admit it, but they always do. So I can see that being, a double digit win probably. And then they have Dallas after that at home. They had like the number one offense last year. They could beat Seattle in Seattle. I can easily see it. The thing that makes me want to lean towards Seattle in that game actually is their top 5 defense. I mean, top 5 rush defense. They can stop the run. They can stop Elliott. So you're making Dak Prescott beat you, and he definitely can. But Amari Cooper doesn't show up on road games. So that's a road game. I'm going to give Seattle the advantage in Seattle against Dallas. Then you're at Miami. I definitely think Miami's improving. I definitely think Miami's a lot better this year. I could even see them stealing that game, especially with Minnesota coming up next. Like if Seattle starts 3-0, which I think is very possible, and then they go down to Miami, think it's going to be an easy win, and Miami, sneaks up on them and gets it. So I could see Miami still in that game, but I'm going to pick Seattle because of Russell Wilson. And then they got Minnesota, like I said, in prime time on Sunday Night Football. There's no reason to think that they can't beat Minnesota after beating Minnesota last year. I mean, definitely Minnesota can win that game, but since it's in Seattle on prime time, I pick Seattle most of the time in prime time unless they're going against the Niners in the last game of the season. So that that's easily that could be a 5-0 start. I can see 5-0. I really can. I think it's gonna be more like 4-1, maybe 3-2 if they let Miami sneak up on them. And then they got the bye week. Arizona has improved with Hopkins. It does sort of scare me. I keep trying to talk myself out of it. Like it's not that as big a deal. Like Kingsbury won't be able to figure out how to use the best wide receiver in the game. But, Odell Beckham hasn't had the best transition to Cleveland. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't fit. And so it could be one of those times. Do they beat Arizona in Arizona after coming off a bye week? I believe they will. Then they got San Francisco. The best I could say is that's a 50-50 game. I don't even want to get into that. Buffalo. At Buffalo, after playing a hard San Francisco game, I got Buffalo winning that game. In Buffalo, they got a Super Bowl defense. They got a good run game. Josh Allen is just going to keep improving. I think Buffalo beats Seattle. And then they got the Rams. I don't even know how I feel about that game. The Rams, losing Gurley, how much does that hurt them? Losing Brandon Cooks, how much does that hurt them? I don't know how good the Rams are going to be this year. They're probably my biggest question mark. I'm leaning towards them. I think they might finish at the bottom of the NFC West. But bottom of the NFC West might be like 7-9. I mean, with how good it could be this year. I could see 3 teams coming out of the NFC West in the playoffs, even with this stacked NFC. So this is just I just don't know about the Rams. I'm curious to see how they come out in that game because it's in LA. I'll pick the Rams because back-to-back road games. But you hardly ever see Seattle lose back-to-back games. They did last year. I'll pick the Rams. Arizona and Seattle. That one, it's a short week. Arizona and Seattle has had their number. I think Seattle finally beats Arizona and Seattle this year. But I can see Arizona winning that game. And then you're at Philadelphia on ESPN Monday night. Obviously, they beat them last year in the playoffs, where they beat them twice last year. The only team probably more injured than Seattle was the Eagles. The question will be, is Carson Wentz playing in this game or not? If Carson Wentz is playing in this game, I think I'm going to pick Philly. If he's not, I think I'm going to pick Seattle. I'm going to lean towards Seattle in this game. I hope Carson Wentz is playing. I really do. Knock on wood. I want to see him in a full season. I want to see what he has in a full season. I'm hoping he stays healthy, but we'll see. I got to pick Seattle in that game. Then you got both New York teams, Jets and Giants. Both teams should be, when you have those two teams at home, maybe Saquon Barkley has a better year and could get running on Seattle. Le'Veon Bell, they both have two good running backs on their team, but they both have two young quarterbacks going into Seattle with that noise. That's how they get those turnovers. That's how they. So I could see, that those should be two easy wins at Washington. Be able to beat the Redskins. I mean, Chase Young definitely improved that defense just instantly just by being drafted. I know that from Bosa. With Sweat, that's a potential that Redskins defensive line has a chance of being one of the best in the NFL, maybe even this year. You got the Rams again at home. I'll pick the Rams, or I'll pick Seattle. I'll pick Seattle at home. I still think Seattle has an amazing home field advantage. I pick them at home most of the time I see when they're at home. I don't know why anyone else would unless they're playing the Niners. And to end at San Francisco, and I think that's going to be for the division again. I think it's going to be a lot like last year. I'm super excited and ready to go. I'm glad it's in San Francisco instead of in Seattle this year. I want to see it. I hope both teams are 100% healthy. I want to see who's the better team. I want to see who wins the division. I still think the Niners beat them, but this is, like I said, this is a Super Bowl caliber team. They can easily win the division and probably win the Super Bowl.